So you're ready to jump into that new gaming system. But the eternal question, players, building a group, building a club, and getting, pushing, using that momentum every week to have some fun, roll some dice, and create some narrative. Just how do we do this? And this is going to be the focus of this vlog. I'm going to be using God Tier as an example, an unexpected discovery, but this process I've used in the past for other gaming systems that I've enjoyed, that I've wanted to build in, share with friends, and organize a group. Now, I wasn't expecting to jump into God Tier or to find another skirmish miniature system. I arrived at it based on the models. I'm part of a Facebook group. I was aware of God Tier, the Kickstarter, but I was part of a Facebook group where we share paintings, miniatures, techniques, basing, and it has a kind of a strong Battletech flavor. But a couple of God Tier miniatures were posted up and painted. I couldn't believe the detail and just the character, the narrative of the sculpts. And it was like, hey, this is a skirmish miniature-based game that has a very, very easy buy-in, and it utilizes an amazing, amazing rule set. And the more that I explored the game, I was like, this is amazing. I love this game. And of course, now I've jumped into it. And on a side note, I have pushed up some God Tier thoughts and some ideas and some of the things that I explore and have been exploring in the archives of my channel here under the God Tier playlist. But now we have the question. So I've played it with a couple of friends. I want to take it a little bit bigger. Now, of course, the question is, leading into this vlog, how do I get a regular God Tier thing going on? Maybe it's monthly, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's like, hey, we haven't played in a while, let's just spend an afternoon playing. Building that support structure. And that's the lens that we're going to examine. So the first question is just taking stock directly around you. Are you involved in other miniature systems or other gaming systems where there is the potential for some crossover? When I was looking to run my Dark Heresy Warhammer 40,000 RPG, that was like beyond easy, because I was able to plug in not only with role-playing gamers from my D&D groups, but also literally from the Warhammer 40K players that I know, being a 40K enthusiast and playing it myself. It was like easy mode, overnight, instantly, lots and lots of players. Pulling in other players for Dungeons & Dragons or other systems because I'm connected to the board gaming community, the miniature gaming community, the historical wargaming community, et cetera, I can kind of look and pull in some players. So when you have that system, literally friends or other associates or other people in the community, can you pull them in? And it's not so much getting them to immediately buy in, but just to be exposed to the game, play the game, maybe have an interest in sharing the game. So that's the first aspect, just kind of roughly taking stock and saying, are there 3 or 4 players that can help jump this with me? Or maybe not. You could be going in absolute 0 friends to pull in to play. An example of that, Judge Dredd Miniatures. The miniatures game. Love it. Play it. Judge Dredd was a very, very formative part of my teenage years, reading the comic books and exploring that. So when they released the miniatures game, I was sold just on the narrative alone. I mean, the rules are very, very interesting also, but they could have been anything to play. And jumping in on Dredd, that's a very, very specialized aspect. That was much, much harder to boot and to build. So do we have a few players? The next part is having everything to present the best that it can. Having everything that you can for a new player to come in and play the game with 0 buy-in, almost a demo. Now, this is where system is very, very important, and this is why I mentioned God Tier compared to some other systems, maybe like Warhammer 40,000 or Battletech, which we're going to look at. Imagine when you walk into a gaming store or a gaming club, or you're stepping up to play a game, the presentation is everything. I mean, the components, the miniatures, the chance to sit down and play. So to start a little group and say, look, you have to have your own miniatures, you have to have your own war bands, whatever it's going to be for the system, that could be challenging. There could be someone out there already in the community that's looking to connect. But for new players, they might want to try the rules. They might want to try things out. So being able to get yourself to a place where you have 2 factions or you have 2 or 3 playable units. Now, God Tier, this was very easy because the starter set, there's 2 starter sets. They literally have 2 war bands each. Comes with the maps, comes with the tokens, the dice, the rule books. Picking up both of those gives you the potential for 4 players. You can do 2 versus 2. You could do 4 versus 4. It's a relatively low buy-in. The other war bands, as you collect them, they're anywhere from 15, 20 USD. That buy-in is easier. Something like Warhammer 40,000, to have 2 complete armies, that's a lot. Playing X-Wing miniatures, you could get a little bit of a faction. Buying in for Battletech is extremely easy. You just pick up the Game of Armored Combat starter set, and that has enough mechs for 2 or 3 players to play a game, and has the maps and have everything. So making sure, depending on your system, when I was jumping into DBA, having enough armies. DBA was really easy. Historicals, playing my Romans because the scale was just a couple of stand of miniatures. But having that, having the felt to play on, having a little bit of terrain, having the measure sticks, with the idea being that if you say, hey, I'm going to be here this Saturday and we're going to play some God Tier, we're going to play whatever system, that someone could come up, play, have some fun, and maybe they like the game. Maybe they're intrigued by the game, but now they know that there is a community building. Okay, finding a place to play, right? Positioning yourself and then finding a place to play. On a side note, with Warhammer 40,000, this is a much, much bigger process. You could play some of the skirmish games. You could play some of the smaller games. You could take the box set. What I did a couple of editions back was paint up the starter set, have a little narrative table with a sideboard for some dice and to put your rules, and had some terrain that was able to go down and literally all fit in a box. So when it was time to bring in some new players for Warhammer 40,000 or do some demos at the club, I had this ready to go, and it was a lot more manageable than putting down 2 massive type armies. So positioning. All right, finding a place to play. Now, this also depends on the scope of the group. Is it going to be a little bit more friends and associates based? And, maybe you can do that at your place or someone else's place. Or is it going to be a little bit more forward public facing? Those groups that are forward public facing, meaning you play at a neutral location, they have the capacity to grow much, much faster. Simply because you can advertise, you can get yourself out there in the community, and you can regularly say, hey, at this time, every week, every month, every 2 weeks, we're available to play. Are there any clubs in your area? Are there any gaming stores that you can carve out just a little table in the corner and play your system? These are ideal. Now, there are also opportunities to go to a rec center or a hobby center, but being at a gaming club or a hobby store or board gaming store, these are ideal because you can leave a flyer at the front. The manager of the store can plug in community members when they come in, and someone could say, hey, I'm interested in miniature skirmish. Oh, well, we've got God Tier on Thursdays. Check this out. We've got D&D on Tuesday. Check this out. We've got X-Wing Warhammer. Check this out. It helps to kind of push things in from that perspective. Now, once we're playing, we want to have a way to showcase what we're doing, and we want to have a way to have some outreach. Facebook, a blog, a website, a YouTube channel. These are things, of course, that are getting a little bit more technical and outside of the scope of this vlog, but having some sort of digital presence that you can show, probably the easiest is Facebook. Starting a Facebook group and call it Westchester, New York God Tier Players, or Westchester, New York God Tier Enthusiasts. So you have those keywords if someone is searching for it or browsing or looking for that particular system based on the location, but also a place to take some pictures and show some progress with the group. And this does 2 things. The progress of the group And the highlights would be pictures from when you play, battle reports or just getting together or kind of cool moments on the table. But also in between meeting, a chance to ask questions and engage community, a chance to post up, hey, here's some miniatures that I'm painting for the system. Or, here's a cool rule, a tactica that I was thinking about. It keeps that momentum in between meetings, but it also allows others looking for that system to jump in and kind of get an idea ahead of time, kind of ease in and watch the group from a distance and get to that comfort level where they could then go and say, hey, I'd like to participate and play in that. Starting out small, 2 or 3 or 4 players, following this kind of format and momentum, the group will grow organically. And I have to say, having some sort of web presence, and again, Facebook, YouTube, blog, website, is key. I mean, for myself, pulling back a little bit, I played Warhammer 40,000 with my friends, literally basement battle reports. Every Friday we would get together, roll some dice, play some games, and have fun. Half the time we didn't even really know what the heck we were doing with the rules. And that went on for a number of years. Then we kind of went different ways in life. Life gets in the way. Some people move away, and I didn't play 40K for a while. This was kind of the end of 3rd edition. And I knew 4th edition was coming out, but I wasn't really plugged into the community. It was a little bit different back then. And then one day I was thinking about, hey, all the awesome times I had rolling dice and playing 40K, let's do that again. Let's pull out my Eldar. Let's pull out my Space Wolves. Ironically, I was a son of Russ. I played Space Wolves for years and years. So I pulled out my Wolves and typed in, Warhammer 40,000 New York and literally found Battle for Salvation, the Battle for Salvation Gaming Club, 5-10 minutes from my house. The gods intervened, whether they were the dark gods or the light of the Emperor. That remains debatable. If I had some motivation and I wasn't so lazy, I could have walked to play. And I'm like, hey, here's this club where they're playing every week. And at that time, the Battle for Salvation Club was in process maybe a year and a half. It was at a rec center. There was 6, 7, 8 players, maybe 10. A pretty small group. We were connected with Comic Book Heaven, a comic shop, gaming shop in White Plains. So you had that community. I mean, it was established, but it was really starting out. So to walk in and be a part of that, I would not have known to pull in and find the group. So don't underestimate a good web presence. But it is completely possible to boot up, to build up, to have your gaming club, gaming group, and be a part of that, either with that system or other systems. And sometimes it's something that's weekly, sometimes it's something that's monthly, and sometimes it takes on a different life of itself. And I'm going to close out with this example and then turn it over to you guys in the comments for some feedback or some ideas that you've used to build your group or your club. And if you want to drop a link to your club or group in the comments, absolutely do that. I'll check the posting because YouTube might grab the link and think it's spam, but I'll go through in like 10 minutes or a few hours after you post it and check that and approve it. Talisman the board game. I'm just going to leave it at that because I could very easily go on a rant about this game. A little bit of a background because I think it frames it well. I was playing Dungeons & Dragons a couple of years back when I had large blocks of free time. So literally we would play D&D from 9 in the morning to like 10 or 11 at night. And we had some amazing campaigns, and we played with the Dungeon Forge, and we had the miniatures, and there was like 10 or so players. It was a really, really awesome group. And I met a lot of friends through that group that I pulled them into 40K and other endeavors. So, we were adults. We'd have some adult beverages, and you kind of wind down for the evening, and you got to kind of let things mellow and wear off. So one day we play Talisman. They bring out the old copy of Talisman, and I'm like, what's this game? And we play it, and we were a very, very competitive group. And Talisman is a competitive game. It's a race for the crown of command, but I like to play it narrative for the story, even though it's meant to play a competitive game, but when we play competitive, it is really, really cutthroat. And I got into this game so much and enjoyed it, and years since then, it has become a very, very interesting part of my gaming life. But the way that it's evolved is it's not something that we play weekly. It's not something that I necessarily play even monthly, because when we play with all of the expansions. It's got the core board, it's got the sideboards, city, dungeon, woodlands. We play with all the characters. I mean, it's an all-day event. It's like playing Twilight Imperium. We plan for it. But over the years, I have met other Talisman players. I've met other friends from Warhammer 40,000 and pulled them into Talisman. We have like a private page, and it's got a mailing list. And every now and then, every other month, every couple of months, when things kind of align, we send out and say, hey, who's up for a big game of Talisman, this Saturday or this Sunday? Let's do it. Let's make it happen. So we have built the resources to play this game in particular every couple of months when we can, having that in place. So I say that because there might be a gaming system, like in this case, God Tier, or another miniatures game that you're like, you know what, Battletech, weekly, I want to play weekly, I want to play weekly, I want to play weekly. But there could also be aspects of the hobby, say Twilight Imperium or other bigger games or games that you love, you enjoy, but they're more like every couple of months or when things align to play from that perspective. So you can also utilize these ideas to put that in effect also to build up your base and build up your support.